Paul, the reason why I wanted you to have to jump back on is last week and a couple weeks before we've been getting some questions from our listeners in regards to buying and selling properties at the same time. Some of the questions that were coming in, we answer these questions all day, every day, and we want our listeners to know, what we're saying and how we're helping folks that are buying and selling. One of the questions that came in from Kelly in Narragansett was this. She said, I'm going to sell. I know my house is going to sell. Well, I can't find anything to buy. What do I do? Right. Another question came in. Well, hey, I've got such a low interest rate on my home, Emilio. What do my wife and I do when we're selling this and we have to purchase something at a much higher rate and we're paying kind of the same amount for a mortgage for a much smaller home? Right. So like these are the questions that are coming in. So I'd love to hear your take.
So just, your first question you were asking about, the buying and selling. So obviously you have a house to sell, in this market, inventory is, lower than it has been in years. So, the house, is even average or better. It's going to sell in probably one weekend, most likely.
Mhm.
You're going to have numerous offers. Obviously that's the case, especially in certain parts of the state. So it makes it hard because you're right. Do you want to, accept an offer, but it's contingent on you finding suitable housing? I mean, that is an option, of course, but then again, it might deter certain buyers of, oh, well, you know what, how long is that going to take in this market? Like, I want to move in
Right.
within 30 to 45 days. How can we, and then what do you do as an incentive? Can you do a rent back situation where, what, we'll close on the property in 60 days, but you have to give me up to 60 more days to rent back. That's something I've seen come together a little more often than it has in the past. And then after that, you'd have to then find, God forbid, you have to find some type of short-term rental or stay with family. Not that you want to go that route, but I see that a lot of rent backs right now, and people are more open to it, buyers, than in the past because inventory is so low. So it
Mhm.
almost is like if you can have the flexibility as a new buyer to, sometimes that's going to help your offer. Because if you say you have to close in 30 days because you're selling your house as well, and that's when it becomes more complex. So, I mean, what do you tell your clients in that situation? How do you go around it?
Yeah, I mean, I tell my sellers some of what you just said there, and I also point out in the purchase and sales agreement when they do accept an offer, if they can get a buyer that's subject to seller finding suitable housing, I tell them a couple things. I say, listen, they're gonna want an end date for this, whether it's
Yep.
90 days. The longest we worked out was 6 months for someone. But I also say we need to pay special attention to the mortgage contingency section because over here, the buyer stated that if their interest rate exceeds 6.5%, for example,
Yep.
that they will not get approved for a mortgage. Now, what we want to do is we want to go back to that buyer's agent and we want to say, hey, change that to prevailing. The reason why we want to change that rate, that hard number rate, is because if rates go up, this would preclude the buyer and give the buyer an out on that agreement. So you need to make sure that, and this is one of the most important things, right? In this market, and when you're dealing with complex situations, we can put complex situations together. The other thing that I tell my clients is, hey, if you have family or friends or have a place you can rent, or if you want to travel. We had one client that had an RV. He's like, I'll just drive around the country. And I know that's a very limited, small amount of people that are going to do that. But Paul, there's always solutions, and it's all about how much money you can get today in today's market, cash, and what you can do with that cash to better your life, right?